This is Patrick Roth, Senior Support Tech for E1 Business Solutions. Today we're going to look at setting a GP batch ID using today's date and sequencing the date with numeric 010203. As you know, all the transactions in Dynamics GP, except for BankRec, all have batches. And if your source data has a batch ID that you want to apply for whatever, then we can map that easily. No problem there. But sometimes you don't, and so you'll have different schemes that you want to create. Some people will just put it a constant and it's always the same batch, maybe called top, or otherwise a very common approach is to set the batch ID to today's date. So if we look at mine in this .NET script calculation, we're going to create we're going to grab the first, the date time now, and then we format it and return back sc underscore my date string, and then we format it to this date string. So YYYY and so that would work. That would work, but if I ran multiple batches, they would all go into the same batch. Again, that might be a problem, but sometimes maybe you're using control batch counts and you want different batches, and so if we ran 5 integrations and it ran into the same batch, that screws up your batch totals, your batch counts, and you can't do that. So what we could do is maybe we would sequence it. So maybe today's date in the same format, and then sequence with 010203. And that presents an interesting problem because there's nothing to keep track of the map runs. We could use the run number, but that's not any kind of sequence 1, 2, 3. So that could be anything. So that wouldn't work. We create our own SQL table. We could write into our SQL table and then we could read back. So we could keep track of the map runs per day into our SQL table. But that seems like a lot of overhead just for something fairly simple. So then it occurred to me that we could just look at GP. So as I run these batches into SOP with the dates and then perhaps sequencing them, GP has those batches already stored in the SY00500. So we could query that and we could look at it. So indeed, that's what we did. So if we look at our SQL command, which is running integration pre-task, we can look at a script. And the one interesting thing I'll note right up front is in a SQL script, you can choose a checkbox to update global variable SQL command results. So we can return one column of one row of data. And in that, we can stick it into a user-defined global variable. In this case, I created one called GBL underscore batch ID. Looking at the SQL script, declare some variables, and then we would want our batch ID in the format of SC, and then YYYMMDD, and this convert script will do that. Lastly, we'll grab the batch ID, and then we want the batch ID, this, and then the %, and we'll run the command select max of the batch ID, where the batch source is still transaction entry, and the batch number is like that batch. If we don't find one, the batch number is still null, then this is the first batch of the day, and we'll just tack on 01 and return this new batch ID. If it isn't null, if we did actually return value and it's not null, then we'll declare, again, more variables. We will grab the doc number variable that we just created. So we can call this GP function, this SQL function, IB number underscore inc underscore dec. We'll tell it to increment it. We'll pass it in and pass it back through that same variable and grab the error state, and then return that value. So in this case, if it found 01, it will sequence to 02. If it found 02, it'll sequence to 03, etc. If we want to prove that this works, we'll run our map, and it had some successes, fortunately. Had some successes and had some errors, which is convenient because then we can just look at the XML easily enough. And we do see that it is today's date, 8/31, and then it's 01. Okay, so if we run it again, we can look at it, and it's again 8/31, and it's 02. And so it did find the original one. It did sequence it. And if we run it one more time, we again see that it's 83103. So in this case, the script did find the 083102. It incremented it and again returned 03. So it does appear that this is working and doing what we were looking for.